Hello friends, I am Himanshu Pandey, Assistant Professor, School of Law, Devi Ahilya Vishwavidyalaya, Indore. Present module, Research Design, containing study material on concept of research design, especially the research design for legal research resin. It contains all the aspects regarding the description, nature and kinds of research design. Contents of these modules are focused and explained by this lecture. Research design is a very important aspect and very interesting part of every research study. It contains the nature of that study, process and methods and methodology, tools and technology applied therein, steps of the research, everything covers within this concept of research design. In ordinary term, if we try to understand this concept, research design is a planning of detailed outline of any research work. That planning includes steps from the beginning to last, tools and techniques, particular pattern of working, that is method, specific scientific methods, including the formulation of hypothesis. This is all the part of research design. By this term design, we can easily understand this is the shape of research, and this shape of research can be designed in any way. This is the free wish of the researcher, but it should be objectively satisfied. The nature of research design is shaped in the light of research problem, objectives of research, purposes attached therewith and limitations of that research study. In other terms, we can understand research design, it works like a torch to the researcher to proceed in a particular direction to find out and conclude his research work. It is a mandatory step designed in every research study. Without designing this research, it is not possible to complete any research task. Basically, it is the procedural linkages of research problem with its objectives and purposes of research. The research design should be the proper in the light of the objectives of research. Basically, research designing is an independent choice of researcher. Any way he wish, he can pursue his research work. But if he is unskilled, inexperienced, in that case he cannot follow any ideal procedure which may provide him a satisfactory result. That is why it is necessary that to opt a secure way of doing any study. This is the pattern of working research. If the person is already familiar, experienced in doing research in any particular area of a study, he can follow that common pattern. But if he has no experience, no knowledge, in that case it is better to go with the experience and pattern followed by the previous researchers for researching their problem similar to present one. This research design contains the procedure and method, or in easy word we can say this is the blueprint of whole research work before going to start any task. In ordinary sense, if you proceed for any task like any picnic, planning for picnic, party, traveling, future planning, business planning or academic planning. Before executing that planning, the person draws certain sketch in his mind that how that act shall be proceeded, what steps will be followed, what means will be used and how that matter shall be reach on final stage. Or what we can say, this is the strategy before starting the task. Research design can be called as a strategy which is psychologically designed by the person for performing every step of the transaction. Similarly, in the research, this is a strategy which is designed by the researcher for performing every step of research in a certain direction. It guides the procedure. If any strategy which has already been designed, determined by the person before starting any task, in the light of that strategy, what person does? He design a blueprint. That means he describe that design in any substance, in any manner. This is a blueprint which is usually required for starting any work. This blueprint containing both the substantive steps and procedural aspect involved therewith. The substantive principle, which is the objective of research, is always kept in mind while performing the work through its procedure. This blueprint contains both basic strategy and the procedure, and in the light of strategy and procedure or the objectives of procedure, the person proceeds further and it works as a guide to researcher in the field that what shall be his further step and what step is required to be taken by him in any particular appropriate manner. Research design starts from the beginning to last. It works from the beginning, that is the formulation of research problem, till the end of the research. There is a question, dispute regarding this particular aspect, whether the research design comes into action after formulation of research problem or before. Basically, the research process starts after formulation of research problem. But another view of the scientists, they says that design means where the person apply his mind with the subject. And formulation of research problem, we find there is the involvement of the researcher in shaping the research problem. That means for the formulation of research problem, researcher has applied his mind and shaped the research problem, formulated the research problem in a certain shape. That is why on this precision, it is also said that the formulation of research problem is the part of research design. Formulation of research, any research problem itself suggests that what shall be the basic substantive next step of the researcher towards finding the research and following the procedure within the research. Basically, research design depends on following things. First is the nature of research problem, objectives of research, purposes of research and limitations of research. On these bases, objectives and purposes of research can be classified in two categories. One is substantive design and procedural design. In every research, this research design is formulated in two stages. First is substantive part and second is procedural part. In designing, the substantive part first comes. Substantive research design is the initial level of designing which ipso facto comes into shape on the basis of nature of problem, objectives of research and purposes thereof. Where researcher has no alternative choice and no interference in the proceedings in the light of the objectives. He has to proceed in the light of the objectives. According to the nature of problem, the objective of research may be descriptive, diagnostic, remedial, comparative, experimental, etc. That means substantially the researcher has to design his research process with these objectives to explore, to describe or diagnose or compare the facts or variables. Before research designing, researcher should have the experience and skill, knowledge about the steps and procedure to be followed in research. And if he has started research, he has to be vigilant at every stage of the proceeding. The process he is following during the research, he should make it confirm whether it is in conformity with the determined design or not. And the procedure followed to pursue research is significant for the objectivity of the research or not. After the substantive shaping of the research part, second, the procedural choice comes with the researcher. The researcher has freedom to select the tools, techniques and the procedure followed for data collection, research procedure, whether it shall be the doctrinal research or empirical research. Researcher has a scope of managing between the purpose and limitations of research. Certain defined purposes the researcher has on which he has to focus during the research, and at the same time he has certain limitations as to the time, fund or human resources. For the sake of balancing between these two, the researcher preferred to follow those methods which are appropriate, work-worthy and easy to handle and administer in the given situation. This is the freedom of researcher to design procedure of his research, but he should also be attentive on this part that his procedure should be designed in the light of the objectives and purpose of the research to be studied. Objectives and purpose of research design, it provides the basic shape. By looking into the research design, one can easily understand that what research problem what is the nature of research problem undertaken by the researcher. It reflects the nature of research problem and objective thereof. Research design also works as an instrument for directing the research. It provides the direction that what action should be made by the researcher. Research design contains the hypothesis, research methods selected by the researcher, tool and techniques for data collection, nature of data required for his study. All these steps are guided by this research design to the researcher in his process of investigation. It also avoids the conflicting situation or confusing situation at any stage where the researcher is in a fix that what should be his next step. Ordinarily, he should proceed in the direction of the procedure prescribed in the design. And sometimes, if he find any problem or any such situation, in that case, he can refer the objectives of his research. Procedural design provides the alternative choice to the researcher for balancing between his objective purpose and limitations of research. There are various steps of research process which starts from the formulation of research problem, review of literature, formulation of hypothesis, selection of area for research, selection of variables to be studied, samples of study, methods of study, tools and technology, procedure of data analysis, and the way of interpretation of his research work. On the basis of nature of objectives and the question to be determined through the research, it can be classified between two categories. One is qualitative and quantitative research, and second one is doctrinal and empirical research. Because the legal research area is studied commonly by the doctrinal empirical method so as to nature of data is concerned, and what nature of data is required for the inquiry, what kind of inquiry is required, that is determined by the method, that is qualitative and quantitative research methods. Qualitative and quantitative research methods, these are two forms of design which makes the classification on the basis of the inquiry to be made by the researcher. If the objective of researcher is to inquire as to the facts, attributes, behavior of any person, in that case he has to go with the qualitative research. If he wants to measure the variables in where the data required for the research is in the numerical form, that is the matter of quantitative design. This qualitative research design is ordinarily applied in social science researches, including the legal research. Especially for the legal research, this is the prominent area of interest for the law scholars as to study the social behavior and to see the impact of law on their behavior, where the objective of research is to inquire the facts which is of the nature of behavior, attributes, or those variables, those facts which can be of narrative nature. That is the subject matter of qualitative research, and this design is operated and followed for knowing the qualitative data. Has quest to know what it is, how it exists, what is the relation. All such questions can be answered by following this qualitative research method. The word qualitative implies and emphasizes on the qualities of any entities and on processes and meaning that are not experimentally examined or measured. Data of qualitative research is distinct from the data of quantitative research. Data of qualitative research is only observable, observed. The behavior of any person can be observed, but it cannot be measured. The personality traits of any person can be observed, non-measurable. Where the nature of data for quantitative research is measurable and variable. That means its quantity can vary, which can be measured on certain scales like frequency, strength of students in the class. Qualitative method may be defined as the technique associated with the gathering, analysis, interpretation and presentation of narrative information. The answer of qualitative analysis comes always in the narrative form. After qualitative research design, the second research, that is the quantitative research design. By the term you can easily understand that quantitative research design means the design which used to deal with the numbers, statistics and mathematical variables. Quantitative method may be defined as the techniques associated with the gathering, analysis and interpretation and presentation of numerical information. The primary objective of quantitative design is to investigate those facts which are of the numerical nature, which can be verified or which can be measured on certain scales. Though the qualitative characteristics has also made variable and estimable by the scaling method in the social science techniques. The scaling method is used to convert the qualitative data into the quantitative one, and it is analyzed in the quantitative form, and after analysis whatever the numerical result comes, on that basis the interpretation of any behavior or attributes is given. The areas of study in the quantitative research may be the statistical analysis, comparison, census and all those investigations where the data required in the numerical form. After analyzing, discussing about the qualitative and quantitative methods on the basis of their distinct approach as to the nature of investigation, the nature of data, the second way of understanding the research design, that is on the basis of the nature of data, that is doctrinal and empirical research design. Doctrinal and empirical research designs are commonly used in legal research, and doctrinal research design is frequently and prominently used in legal research. Distinction between these two kinds of design, one is doctrinal, second one is empirical, can be understood on the basis of the terms used to denote these design. First is doctrinal research design. Doctrinal research design is a design which is commonly used to study the facts in library or through participation in all those activities where the information comes from the credible source. By the term, you can easily understand doctrine. Doctrine means any principle, and principle means all those facts, information which are deemed true. In our day-to-day life, we used to rely on the informations, universal facts. We do not go into investigation and test those facts. Merely on the basis of their acceptability, they become the principle. On this approach, we can understand the data relied only on the basis of truthness, that the data which comes from any source of information, and that source of information is credible. In that case, there is no need to test or investigate the fact in real social circumstances. It provides the convenience to researcher to proceed his research on the basis of information which is in the form of doctrinal nature. In legal research, there are basically three sources of authority, that is legislative, judicial, and the custom. Wherever any information exists in our society in the form of legislative text, precedents, and existed customs, in that case, the researcher investigate and search the data, analyze the data within the propounded principles provided by these authoritative sources. In doctrinal research, the researcher can collect the data from library by looking into the books, journals, other documentary material, where he has reason of satisfaction that first, that the information comes from the credible source. The person who is generating this information is somewhere expert, authoritative, or experienced person. Only then he has reason to rely him. And second, that the information coming from the source is relevant to his work. If he is satisfied on these two stages, and if he has no scope of doubt as to the truthness of the information, he can accept that information for his research. Where the research is performed on this principle, that is the doctrinal research method. Next to doctrinal research method, a method which is commonly used in socio-legal research, that is empirical research and also known as non-doctrinal research. Whereas in empirical research, researcher does not rely on the information coming from the second source, coming from other sources. There is no reliance on the credibility of the information. In that case, he directly go in the society to observe the facts, collect those facts through various techniques and tools, and thereafter analyze them and comes with the conclusion as to the existence of any fact or information in the society. The approach behind these two methods, doctrinal and empirical. In doctrinal method works only on the basis of credibility of source, relevancy of information, and assumption as to the truthness of the information. Whereas empirical research relies on the investigation of the researcher, reliability of tools and techniques applied for the data collection, their proper analysis, and the final conclusion comes after focusing on all the aspects relating to the research designing. This lecture can be summarized as the research design is a first and important aspect which provides the shape to any research work. It is a blueprint of research which is designed and shaped in the light of this formulation of research problem, research objectives and purposes attached therewith. It provides the procedural direction to the research in the light of the purpose and limitations of research. Research design contains all the steps, techniques, methodology, methods of the research study. And at last, I suggest that the researcher should, free from external models, suggested he should take his own decision in the light of the objective of research, purpose of research and limitations thereof. Thank you. Goodbye.